Alright, welcome to Stampscaping 101. I just did this scene yesterday, and it was a real, I don't know, kind of a good lesson for me in terms of the approach with my birch trees, Stampscapes birch trees. And after I finished this and I thought about it a while, I thought, you know what, with this vellum that I used on this scene, I think we can do a much faster version of this and so much easier. After I did this, I thought, you know, I'm not making full use of the transparent aspect of vellum. So let's really, on this scene, let's really take advantage of that aspect of it, and let's see if it works out. Okay, so what I'm going to do, this is a full-size sheet of matte cardstock. Okay, it's a sealed cardstock. Okay, it's like clay-coated. So there's matte, there's glossy. Glossy just has that extra sheen on there. I would probably use that. I think that would be even easier to use, but a lot of people don't have that, so I'm just going to use this matte one. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this gradation of tones on here, okay? Now, I'm going to be using a 5x7 piece of vellum, okay? But we're going to spray mount this to this, okay? So you don't want to do it the exact same size, because if you know about spray mounting, we're going to put spray adhesive on there, and if it was the exact same size, you're going to have to be like perfect with it to get it perfect onto a thing. So go with a larger size, you know what I mean? It's not, you know, cardstocks aren't that expensive, and you know, so just use the full thing so that when we glue this down on here, you know, we can, you know, there's plenty of room for tolerance on here, okay? All right, so that's going to make it a lot faster to do, easy, etc. I'm going to use one of these infused cotton rounds on here. I would typically use a, like a paper towel or whatnot, but let's just go with that and see how it goes. I'm going to grab some Distress Ink re-inker fluid, and this one that I'm going with is antique linen, okay? I'm looking at some of my other inks here. Ground espresso. I might use some of these other ones as well, but let's just go with this. Okay, so what I'm talking about, I forgot what they call those, graduated filters for cameras. Like when you're taking photos of landscapes, you can put a filter on your camera and it goes from dark to light like that. It's because, sometimes if you're taking like high noon, you don't want things to get washed out. But here's what I'm going to do. Here's the idea. I'm going to go from dark on the top and bottom of my scene, and it's going to get lighter as it moves into this middle area. So it's going to go dark, light, dark. Okay? That's the idea. So, when I do this, I'm going to start off with a light tone. Okay, now I've never used these things before, so I don't know how it's going to work. These are supposed to be 100% cotton. And I thought, these things are pretty cheap, and I think, we might be able to utilize these. I don't even know if I'm using the right side, or the correct side. Maybe I didn't. I think I used the wrong side. Oh well. You use the right side. Okay, so here's what I'm doing right here. I'm applying this down. Now, let me see. I need to get kind of a general idea of where this is going to go. So it's going to go right here. Okay, now you don't need to be perfect because we're overdoing it here, right? Okay? So if you do a little bit more than you need, then that's fine, right? Just don't do less because you want to be able to put this wherever you want on this piece, okay? Okay, now see what I'm doing right here? Okay, now right in here I'm going to try to use a little bit less pressure, and it's also getting drier on here, right? I kind of loaded this up here pretty good with the ink. So there's a pretty good amount in here still. But in the center portion, I'll try to go a little bit lighter, maybe. I don't know if that's not right. Okay, that's not very much lighter. I went heavy, okay? It doesn't look... But you can leave some of the white in there, okay? It's going to be more important when we get into our darker tones, okay? So don't sweat this right now. What this is doing too is you're kind of saturating the surface and some of the pulp of the cardstock a little bit, okay? With this light tone, okay? So that's why we start light here. Because if we go kind of too dark with it, or coverage, you know what I mean? It's not going to matter so much because it's light to begin with. Okay, so that is that. Let me see. I wish I had some other colors of distress ink. Re-inkers like my walnut stain. I don't have it. Okay, so let's just use the walnut stain pad. Okay, yeah, the pads are okay, but like for this amount of ink right here, if I was dabbing and going like this with it, that would have taken me, I don't know, a lot more time to do. Okay, now can you see this right here where it's getting a little bit darker with the walnut stain? Now there's a lot of antique linen still in this, so I'm not getting, and my walnut stain's a little bit dry, but see that where it's a little bit darker up there? Okay, that's what I'm going to do down here too. Okay, so we're going for this graduated filter. Okay, so it's going from darker down here and darker up top here. Okay. Okay, this isn't going very much darker at all. It's incremental, okay, in terms of the darkness. But see this right here? What I'm doing is I'm not going in here quite as far, okay? All right. Now flip it around, so you can come to it from this side too. I think that's easier than going from the bottom, going like this, okay? See, this is my natural motion. And I'm using my shoulder too, okay? I'm not just using my wrist like this, okay? Use your whole arm, because it's just more ergonomic and it's less tiring. Not that you're going to develop an arthritic shoulder from doing ink applications or something like that, or in your fingers, but it just makes it more graceful, when you're using your whole kind of body. That's what they used to teach us in art class, you kind of draw with your body as opposed to your hands only. You get more gesture in it that way as well. Did we listen in art classes? I don't know. Probably not. Okay, I'm going with darker browns here. Now, I don't have any darker browns in my distress inks. Walnut stain's not that dark, okay? So this is what I'm going to do. Darker up here, okay? I tell you what, maybe I'll go with some greens down here for my grassy area, and we'll go darker up top here. Now, either one of these at this point in time can be the top, it doesn't really matter, right? Okay. Now this is going to be my background, so I don't have to do that on my vellum, on my scene. It's just going to be inherently, you know, graduated and hopefully nice and rich looking in terms of a background when I put my vellum over it like that, because it's going to be, see, I don't want to put that down on there just yet because this is still wet. Okay, this is the bottom portion, but I'm going to go a little bit more kind of green oriented down here, but let's work this graduated area. I'm going to put some tone out here to make it a little bit more of a vignette, kind of a closed in area here. This is going to really make our birch. I've been using birch and aspen. I kind of forgot what I was doing. Either birch or aspen. I've been saying aspen so much. I just used my birch for the first time yesterday with this vellum technique. Okay, so see that right there? Darker, lighter, like that. The thing about kind of this gradation is getting those intermediate tones, which means that you just have to use your drier applicator when you're getting into these areas like this. See this right here? See how light that is? Let me press really hard, okay? But now what you do is you press lighter, to get it a lighter application, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Dark brown. Same applicator. When you use the same applicator too, like this, what you do is you get a mix of this color, whatever color you're using, and the previous color, which gives you that intermediate color. Okay? Unless you're using like a super dry pad, then you go to a super juicy one, then it's going to be predominantly, the current one. But when you can get kind of those variations, those mixtures of colors, it just makes it so much easier because you're not jumping up from one tone to the next. You're jumping up somewhere in the middle of the the two colors that you're you're working with, or the two whatever consecutive ones that you're working with. Okay, so see that right there? I like it a little bit streaky in here too. It gives a kind of extra atmosphere when you look at a scene. Okay. Now this is a dark brown, so it's pretty dark, so, be careful about this one. And this is applying very easy because of the amount of ink that I used with the antique linen. You don't see a lot of antique linen here, but you're reaping the benefits of using so much of it because it has kind of penetrated the paper and it has made the pulp of the paper kind of wet. And so your darker tones apply easier because it's easier to slide wet on wet rather than wet on dry, where it's really grabbing and absorbing that ink really fast. Now, this is starting to dry out, though. I can feel it. It's starting to kind of catch a little bit more, okay? So I'll try to work, reasonably fast here. Okay. Now, doing this here too, putting this work in right here, the more work we put in here, the less we're going to have to do later. It's really going to be taking out a lot of the work for us, I think, if this works out okay. Okay, now let's go all the way to black. Why not? Okay, before I do that, let's move into some of the green. Okay, I think I could still use this brown maybe not. Let's use it. Let's use um, here. I'll use this portion right here for some peeled paint. I don't think I have peeled paint in a re-inker. A lot of the things the ink pads or the inks that I'm getting now. Um, if it's a new color ink that I don't have, if I'm not going to be making impressions with it, I just get the re-inker for it, because I just you put a few drops of the re-inker on an applicator, right? And then you get so much more ink in a re-inker bottle than you do in a pad. Now pads are really convenient, just you open it up and you take a dip, as opposed to grabbing a bottle and putting a drop on there. I mean, it doesn't save that much time, but and the pads are very visible. You can see what color they are. The bottle, you just have to know what colors you have, to dip into your collection of it. But I don't know, the bottles for me, they don't take up very much space. They hold a lot of ink, and like I said, you don't really need the pad unless you're making impressions with that ink. I don't make impressions that are super light like that. You usually make impressions with darker, inks, like primarily black, right? So, I don't know. I'm a pretty big fan of just using re-inker fluid these days. All right. Let's go with. Let's see here. Okay, I gotta dig down in my my pads right here. Here's a few pads. Memento. I was going to go for my Marvies. I know a lot of you don't have Marvies, but here's some different values of green. They're different kind of I don't know, shades of green too. But what I'm looking for mainly is light, medium, and dark, okay? And then we'll use it on here. We'll go lighter, medium, and dark, okay? Remember, it's graduated, so. Okay, so let's go with, let's try this pear tart. The pear tart might even be a little bit lighter than that peeled paint distress. Okay, something like that. Let's go a little bit more. I can feel the paper is really kind of grabbing at this point in time because it's really drying out, from that initial re-inker fluid application. I mean, it's not too bad. Okay, bamboo leaves. Okay, test it out. It's not very dark. Memento inks in general, they're not very dark, even if it kind of shows kind of a darker color on the pad surface. It might look like that kind of when you're using it, but then kind of when it dries out, it dries much lighter, I find. Cottage ivy. Okay, let's take a measurement here. Okay, I can come up here much more. Okay. Now there are some papers out there, like scrapbooking papers and whatnot, that already have these types of things on there. You can just put them right on top of one of those, your vellum. And I think that would be kind of cool to utilize some printed papers. All right, this thing's holding up pretty good. I haven't even really thought about this in terms of my utilization of it, which is a good sign. You don't want to you just want to be thinking about your application more than the applicator that you're using, okay? Like I'm just thinking about, okay, I want more of this color here. So this is performing really well. Is it different than the paper towel? Maybe. It might be a little bit more absorbent. I'm not sure. Okay, I'm laying down some more of this brown. It needed a little bit of a darker tinge. All right, now let's go with black. Okay. Can you see that? It's just a little bit darker up there, right? All right. It looks like it'll be like one of these applicators per scene. It's getting pretty shredded now. I think I like that other side of it though, but maybe that's because it's getting real shredded at this point in time. I don't know. But it's not leaving a bunch of fibers everywhere. You know, sometimes, you know, the paper towels, paper towels are, you know, I don't know if they're cheaper. These things were awfully cheap. Okay, but see this background right here? I think, you know, that we are just about ready right here, okay? So our trees and everything like that are going to be stamped onto this. It's going to go like that, all right? Now my fingers are getting pretty inky. I'm wondering if I should go wash my hands. Maybe. I don't know if I need to, though. I think this is going to be a pretty easy process right here. I'm not really not thinking in terms of transparencies and whatnot. I'm slowly starting to. It's just, you know, it's just a very different aspect of kind of materials when you can what am I trying to say? I'm thinking about my composition here. It's just very different when you can see through your paper, you know what I mean? And you can take advantage of that. It's just it's kind of weird. Now I know, you know, vellum's been used, but I don't know, I haven't seen it used fully investigated with that idea in mind. I just think there's a lot more possibilities. Can you imagine, you know, stamping something on here and putting like a glitter paper or something like that behind it? I don't know. You know, I don't know if it would be transparent enough for it, you know, because this is a little bit, you know, it's a little bit like frosted, you know, um, glass or something like a frosted window. Okay, let's go with the birch trees right here. Okay, I think I might use my fences on this one too. I'm still exploring the fences type of thing. All right, so let's go with this about like so. I'm going to stamp this a little bit higher because I think I'm going to put a fence in front of it. Okay, so this is using the Brilliance Graphite Black. It's a fast drying pigment ink. I don't know if something like the VersaFine Clair would dry on vellum. If you know, please leave a comment in the comment section. Okay, I do think the VersaFine Clair. I think it would leave a better impression than the Graphite Black. You know, a darker one. But it's just a matter of whether it would dry or not. I don't know. This is water-based, I guess. I always thought it was oil-based, but on the website it says it's water-based, and it's fast drying, okay? Which are something that really, you know, can use on this type of paper. Fast drying. All right. That, and let me stamp out my fence here, I think. I think I want to go with a little bit of a different composition than I did yesterday, so these will be the the smaller birch trees that I use on here. Let's see, I guess I didn't need to take that off. But let's go with that. Okay, this is the fence from Nature Sheet number 26. This is the cling foam version. And let's ink this up. I should probably re-ink my pad here. But I guess it's inked up enough. I was inking it up almost every time I was using it for a while. I guess it's because I had this pad for so long and it was really dried up, so every time I re-inked it, it was just the ink was just kind of sitting on the surface. But now I don't have to re-ink as much because I think it permeated the pad a lot more. Okay, so this is going to go about roughly right here. Now I'm making my impression process here longer just to let more of this ink transfer over to that vellum. Vellum's not as absorbent and porous as like a cardstock or something, so you want that ink to transfer over. And the brilliance too. I mean, as it's sitting there, it's probably drying up and setting up a little bit, allowing that ink to transfer well. Sometimes I make a mistake and I stamp it out and I don't leave it down long enough on the non-porous papers, okay? And then I pull it up and it's like, it's a little bit lighter than I, preferred. Okay, so that is that. Now let's go for these other birch trees, which are smaller. We'll put them over here. Okay. I could go for the same, same size ones again, but I think we'll go with the smaller ones here. All right. And I'm going to stamp them up higher. When you stamp something up higher, from where the base of the trees are, it represents something a little bit farther back. You can stamp it way higher, or you can stamp it just a little bit higher, and it'll be fine. Okay, and we'll let that ink transfer again. Okay. Yeah, I'll just leave that on there for right now. I might be using those again. Not on this scene, but on a different one. Okay, so let's take a look at these birch impressions, okay? So this is on the front side of the vellum. This is what it's going to kind of look like here. We're going to put that like that right over the top of this scene, but these are going to be painted in, so with white. Okay, so let's go with another fence. On this side, I'm going with a smaller fence on this side. Okay. Looks like a little kind of park or something like that we're in here. Garden, whatever. Going to fence here on the left side fence. This few extra seconds, I think, is really paying off here. Leaving it on for an extra 5 seconds or so from what I did yesterday. I'm not used to doing this on vellum. This surface is really, really new to me. I've been stamping on different types of papers, mostly glossy, for decades, and I just started stamping on things like foils and iridescent papers, and it's really... I don't know, it's really just blowing open the possibilities of what you can really do on this. Okay, so that is that. That's the foundation there. We're going to be doing some other things on here too. Maybe I should do the dirt road in here or something like that. Let me pause this video. I think this will be a perfect spot for this dirt road, or just, I don't know, some textures in here. Let me think about what. Okay, I have the dirt road here. This is going to go right in here, like that, I think. Now, I would have stamped this out first. It's kind of better to build kind of on a platform style of foundation first. Um, your foundation things, and you kind of build up from that. But, I don't know, since I didn't do that, we'll just kind of do it now. But what I think I am going to do is I think I'm going to wipe this kind of distant portion off right here, just so it's a little bit less, I don't know, kind of involved here. And see where this is kind of wrapping around like that? It's kind of wrapping around in an area. I would have put the fence out here, but I think this will still work, and if it doesn't, we'll just fill in with some extra textures. But let's go like that. I'm kind of tilting it a little bit, which you can do. This is kind of an airy, light stamp, so I'm just stamping it right over everything. I mean, you can do it before or after, it doesn't matter. Okay, so here's this. It's coming out this way. It goes into this, yeah, but that's what I mean. I would have stamped it out first, and I could work the fence around it, but so be it. Okay, so that is my foundation here. Now, I have this right here, the sedge filler. This is going to provide some extra texture in here, and we're going to fill out this remaining area. So I'm going underneath my fences over here. It's hard to show you this. I have to show you it on a blank piece of paper because this paper is see-through, the vellum, so I'm just building this out like this. See how this kind of fills out? That's why I call it the sedge filler, because it fills in all this area in here, okay? Let's go with that right there. I could stamp it over my imagery right in here, but I'll show you what I'm going to do for that. This is going to be so much easier. With the thing with birch trees, I've always wanted them to be nice and light against a darker background, right? So what I'm going to do here is we're just going to flip this over like this, and we're going to take our bleed-proof white. I just tried this yesterday, and I love it. I love the look on here, and it worked really, really well. We're going to take this, and I'm going to take my bleed-proof white. Bleed-proof white is a really fantastic paint for this, and it goes on super smooth. I'd really recommend a bottle for everyone, but if you don't have that, I don't know, you can try a different type of paint, like white paint. Give it a try and see if it works. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to paint our trunks, and you'll see where this comes into play, especially over our our gradated, graduated background that we did earlier. Okay. Oh, yeah. I'm working around my fence here. I don't need to worry about that. Because the fence is on the front side. See, I'm, kind of getting into the spirit of the transparency, what we do and do not have to do. This is what makes it so easy in terms of an application process. Normally, if you're doing something like a light object that's in front of things, right? You have to stamp that object, and then you have to mask it off, correct? And then you stamp your things that represent something in the back. But on vellum, you don't have to do that. Not that I'm saying, hey, let's stop using white paper. Just all switch to vellum. I mean, in an instance like this where masking would be required, you know, and kind of that kind of type of tedium. Um, I think this is a perfectly, you know, nice way to kind of, you know, remove that entire necessity. All right, so I'm getting those three birch trees done, and doing this one on the other side. This is one of those few instances where I'd say, yeah, you know, it's best to stay in the lines, you know, as far as your coloring process goes. But it's not really hard to do. And I am no painter. I don't know if I've used a paintbrush. No, I think I have. I was going to say, I don't think I've used a paintbrush to paint anything with. I've used a paintbrush to kind of do some ink removal on foil papers, doing my kind of aurora borealis types of scenes, removing some pigment ink with it in a subtractive process, but I don't know if I've painted anything. I mean, I don't remember when I've painted anything. Um, Maybe since I was in art school. Okay, just going over a couple of these areas, making them a little bit thicker and a little bit more opaque. But okay, now we're not completely done with that, but this is kind of what that looks like. Look at those trees, how kind of white they are. And then we're going to be putting them against this background like this. Look at that. Now I can't I don't want to pair it up perfectly because this paint's a little bit wet. I don't want to get a bunch of wet paint on this, but you can kind of see the idea here, you know, already. Okay. All right. Oh, maybe I would have left this a little bit lighter too, you know, with this in mind like that, but oh well. Okay, so I've done that. Let's set this a little bit. Bleed-proof white dries pretty fast. Calligraphers use it, so you can't have, you can't be doing a lot of letter form and, you know, waiting forever for something to dry. So it's a really perfect medium for us. Okay. Going in here with our paint pens, our very thick paint pens. I'm going to be adding some foliage in here, okay? And then what we'll do after that is I'll do some background trees in here as well. So we'll stamp our another batch of some birch trees, and they'll be in back of this foliage from, you know, our foreground birch trees. Okay, so we're layering different imagery in here. I think I'm going to go for a little bit more green on this one. Yeah, just, I don't know, it's a change from yesterday's scene. Yeah, like it's a little bit, you know, closer to spring or something like that. We'll have a lot of yellow in there too. Okay, so kind of cluster your greenery. You can have some, it's like it could represent like a canopy of green. Now I'm doing this on the back, okay? Because you can see it right there clearly on the front, right? But yeah, you don't have to be careful about it too. You can go right over your trunks here because the trunks are on the other side of the scene, so you're not going to affect them at all in terms of the visuals of them, okay? And I like to kind of cluster my foliage up a lot like that, okay? So you kind of do a little bit of a cluster, and then you kind of bring it out a little bit, okay? And let's see. Oh, one of the things I was mentioning is our sedge filler right here, okay? I'm going to take that sedge filler and just stamp it across the back now like this, okay? So see that? When I did that across the back and over my paint, right? Then it's just going right across the background, and I didn't need to worry about it stamping over my birch trees. It eliminates the need for masking and everything. This is not, it's like the opposite of being super careful here, okay? I'm not just going like this, all over the place. I'm working a little area, but you know what I mean? It just does not have to be precise, really at all, okay? Look at some photos, as you're doing something like this. I looked at some photos before. I did my scene yesterday, and I thought, okay, let's see, there's a little canopy, there's foliage in between the trees. I'm not looking at anything right now, but, one of the things I've realized is that you don't have to. Okay, and like I said, here's a lot more green on this one. We're going for some variation. Okay. That's the way it looks right here. Look at that. Doesn't that look fantastic? And it's on the back of the paper. Now we'll put some on the front of the paper so we'll have some foliage in front of things too, but it's not too bad, as far as a technique goes. It's pretty fun. I mean, that's a lot of dots. It didn't take me forever. Okay. Adding yellow in here. Yellow is going to be on top of the green right here, but it's going to be behind the green when we look at it, for the most part, from the front. Okay. Now this green on here, we could heat set it so that this yellow doesn't mix with it, because this acrylic paint, as it's wet, will physically mix with another paint that you lay on top of it, okay? But I'm fine with it mixing in this case right here. I don't need it to be. And I mean, there's a lot of dots that I'm doing out here that are, separate from the green. So those ones will, be, this kind of dull yellow color. But I'm just, putting this in, the same areas for the most part. I mean, you can do a whole different area like that that's, just yellow or something like that too. You don't have to intersperse. Or you can leave some of these areas just green too if you want to. I'm probably doing a little bit less of this one than I did with the green. I don't, there's no plans here. I'm just kind of doing it, and, I'm taking a look and adding a little bit more accordingly. If I deem it, could use some additional color or something like that. Okay, let's get kind of a gist of what we're looking at here by placing it over the top of this. Okay. I might go like that, like a little bit of horizon glow right there. I think that looks pretty good. All right. We'll do some refinements too as far as our shading and color. Once we get everything kind of positioned, then we can kind of decide what we want to add. Okay, this is very bright, kind of canary yellow here. There's no names of colors, by the way, on these pens. Okay. All right, that is awfully fun. Let's take a look and see what that's going to look like. Look at that. Isn't that fun? It's a fun process, I'll tell you that. Okay, let's heat set this. When you heat set those that acrylic dries pretty fast, so I'm pretty happy about that. But, just from the sheer standpoint of, I can work with it much faster. But let's take a look and see what that's going to be looking like here. I think up here, something like that, with that kind of glow on the horizon like that, will look kind of interesting. Okay, so I did mention that I'm going to stamp this again. I think it looks good as is, but just, we're doing some experimenting here, and I really want to see how this is going to look with some additional trees in the background there, like so. Okay, so let's go like something like that. Got it. It is really weird for me to stamp over this right here. In terms of a technique, because I'm usually working with only front, the front of card applications, but this is going to be in the back, so it allows me to do that. It's just, really, really strange. It goes against kind of my notion of everything I know about sequencing in terms of what you stamp, first, second, third, or whatnot. This just opens up a lot of possibilities here. Okay, so let's go with something like this. Alright, I'm stamping this higher up. It's the same one that I used on this side, which will be on the left side in the end result. Now, I'm stamping this right over the top of a lot of the foliage, okay, but the foliage is done in acrylic paint, so these trees should look like they're behind that foliage. Okay, now, I mean, that doesn't, look good like that, but it's going to be like that, okay? And I'm going to fill that in with some additional paint, so I would try this out if I were you. It's just, this process just blows me away. Okay, now see this foliage down here, that green ink and yellow and, I'm just going to be able to paint right over it because you can still see it from this side because it's going to be in front of the white paint. That blows me away. Okay, so here we go. Oh yeah, I need to heat set that impression that I just made of these trees. Okay, so I need to remember to do that. Okay. All right. The amount of masking that would have been required, if we can even do this, you can't mask off all these little dots, I mean, you'd have to mask off the entire cluster of them, if we were just working this on regular paper, but this is so much easier to do this way. Okay, let's see. I need to be able to see. Sometimes it's kind of hard to see, because there's all this imagery layered in here. It's not that hard, And again, it's kind of bizarre just painting over this fence, but the fence isn't on this side, it's on the other side, so, you don't need to worry about it. Okay, there we go like that. If you want to make it a little bit more opaque, then go over it a couple times. This paint is already starting to set up. It's already kind of thick on here. Okay. Now look at that right there. It looks kind of bizarre, but again, this is what it looks like. From that front side, see those trees, in that the brush is in front of those trees like that. So, and then we have it like this. Pretty interesting. Okay, this is a lot of heat setting on here. I think we are done with this portion of it. This is like kind of the backside applications of media. And I think I'm going to spray seal this, and then we'll get to the mounting of it right on here. Okay, you kind of get an idea right now of what we're going after. I like this idea of this kind of road kind of bending back into that light area. So if I'm going to do that like that, maybe I should make some areas a little bit darker? I don't know. Okay, so we'll decide then. Okay, now spray mounting. You just make sure you spray mount the correct side. Flip this over, and then you just take this, and I'm going to give it a good even coating like that. It makes it kind of sticky all the way up to the edge. Okay, so you don't want to do it in like high winds or anything like that. Otherwise, you're going to get like, it all over the place. It'll be on the underside. It's going to get on your fingers and stuff. It's a little bit of a messy process. Maybe what I'll do is I'll spray it on a piece of paper like this, like that, and I'll just be able to pick that right up. Okay, so let me go and do that. Okay, I'm back. It just takes like a second to do that. And I think I'm going to go roughly about... I'm going to bring this up fairly high onto my graduated background, like about like so. Now, this is fairly rippled here, so I'm just going to kind of get out the wrinkles a little bit by hand here. Okay, before I hit it with a brayer. The brayer is a really good idea, but if you don't have a brayer, you just put a piece of paper down over the top of this and just really kind of flatten it out pretty good. And this is a really good thing when most of the stuff you've done is on the other side of it, so you can kind of flatten it out like so. Okay, so done with that. We'll hit it like this, and let me get a brayer. Kind of go with lightly at first, in case there's, some other kind of wrinkles to get out. Maybe go, a couple different directions. Hit it with a little bit of a firmer brayering. Okay. Yeah, okay, still a little wrinkle right there, so get those pressed down fully. Gotta make contact. Oh, this tree. It's funny, this tree isn't kind of brared down, but it's almost like bulging up right on the tree, so it makes it look a little bit more three-dimensional, or it becomes three-dimensional, but I don't want that. If it's on the whole tree, maybe. Yeah, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. It's like on the trees, on the trunks there. I wonder if it looks so dimensional. Okay, so hunting that down like so. So this is what we have so far. Okay. Let's see, should I trim this out so you can kind of see better? I'm going to be trimming this bottom portion out right there. Maybe I'll just leave it on right now, and then we'll trim it off and clean it up later. Okay, so this vellum and spray mounting like this, it makes it pretty easy to handle as far as a cardstock. That's still, let me see, let me burnish this a little bit here. It makes it easier to handle, vellum that's, it's kind of flimsy and, it gets very rippled. But then when you mount it on kind of a nice heavy, cardstock like this, it becomes like handling cardstock. It just has that vellum applied to it on top. Okay, now that background, I mean, this vellum, it's translucent, okay, so it's not going to be perfectly clear, so my background is a little bit lighter than what it looks like, just directly applied. The vellum's not transparent, so it's not like a clear glass window. Like I said, it's like a frosted glass or something like that. Okay, so we have this right now, and what I'm going to do on here is we're going to bring in some additional foliage that will represent the foliage that's in front of these trunks, okay? So we have some of this foliage in back of the trunks, right? Now let's put some in front of it, okay? So we can look for some different opportunities, like there's these branches in here that are sticking out, okay? I'm going to hit those with some additional foliage ink. The green looks different in front of the vellum too. Yeah, it's a little bit lighter, I think. Or maybe hitting it with spray too. Kind of change the characteristic of it a little bit. It might have made it a little bit darker. Okay, that is the green. Let's hit it with some really bright yellow, that canary yellow. I tell you what, let's make it pop a little bit more. Let's heat set that green. I might not heat set it too much, if some of it, this yellow merges with that green, that'll be fine. But see, that green is largely the thing that's in the foreground, even in, the applications of it in the back. But I put down a lot of yellow, but you can't see a lot of that yellow because it was applied after the green on the back side. So, so now we're going to utilize this on the front. It really kind of stands out pretty well, doesn't it? It's kind of bringing the piece to life, making it a little bit more dimensional, I think. All right, now let's go in here and let's start developing things a little bit more. Now we have our imagery laid down in here. And a lot of the toning, for the most part, is done through the use of the graduated kind of foundation in the background, just pre-establishing a lot of the lighting situations. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into some of these areas, and I'm going to establish a little bit more of the structure. There's like these textures down here. I'm going to um, uh, kind of emphasize some of them. Okay, let me add some more texture in here too. I just add that that road was kind of done after the fact, and I'm going to go in and add some additional texturing in there just to kind of blend it in a little bit more. Like I said, it would have been really blended in well had I stamped that first and run my fences around it, but let me establish it as kind of like a less than, really well-traveled road by putting in some of this extra texturing in here. Like about like so. And maybe, let's see. Yeah, let's put in some extra grass in there as well. I made a mistake yesterday doing the other one. I think I could have got stronger impressions with this had I stamped it before I did my colored pencils. Just any kind of media is not going to stick very well to wax, which colored pencils are. So let's go ahead and stamp this out. Remember, I'm going to be trimming out this piece in here. Yeah, these impressions are nice and black. I wasn't, I'm kind of testing out the abilities of a lot of this media too. Like the Brilliance Black can really stick to a lot of things, and it did stick to the colored pencils, but just not as well as stamping it beforehand, and then applying the colored pencils. Okay, let's see. I'm just kind of framing this a little bit. Coming in from both sides. That was a very light impression. I need to hold a little bit longer, I think. Yeah, there, good. All right, now let's go back. Let's hit this area. Now remember, I did that kind of green gradation down here. So I'm just kind of hitting, some of those areas down here with that same type of thing. You can use your browns or whatever if you want to. I'm doing a very light touch with it at first here, okay? I should probably heat set my reeds a little bit, but let's just try it without it. Okay, what I'm going to do is while these birch trees are white right here, I'm going to try to kind of establish them within the scene a little bit more by adding some shadows at the base of them. Okay, now that's kind of a greenish area, so I'll do green down there. We'll also do some black, but I like to establish my shadows with colors within the color scheme of that given area. So if it was purple, I'd do a darker purple shadows, okay? In this case, it's kind of green tones. See this right down here around my fence posts. I'm having those casting a shadow a bit. Like so. I mean, you can do some brighter greens too if you just want to add, a little pop of some brighter tones in here. Here's a little bit of a lime green. Just kind of a little bit of a warmer tinge color. You want this scene to be kind of, welcoming and, it's whatever, type of emotional quality you want to give to it. All right, let's see. Let's try say, burnt ochre. Over that brown tinge. I mean, this is colors, probably a similar color to maybe this brown, that I was using here. So hit it down in the shadow areas, kind of just establishing the shadow areas. See, I established those shadow areas kind of with kind of lighter colors first, and then we'll get incrementally a little bit darker. That's how you have a lot of control over it. See, here's my little road here, and I can kind of go into, some of those textures kind of within there. Now my trees are really standing out strong right now, so we're going to blend those in a little bit, and we'll use some black colored pencil, because I stamped those out in black, so, that would make sense to use it as, the shading component. Same thing down here, you can use some black now around your fences. All I'm doing around these fences, let's say the fence post is like this right here, okay? So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of going a little bit darker right here, and then I'm just kind of going like this, and I'm getting a little bit lighter as I move away from it, okay? So you hit it a little bit darker, and just go a little bit lighter. And I'm just saying the light is coming from in there, so, the shadows are going to be coming like this way. If you're off by a little bit or a lot, it doesn't really matter. Just having some kind of foundational tone like that helps. And then the trees follow suit. The shadows are coming that way, so they're casting their shadow in the opposite direction from the light. Okay. All right. Now, on these trees right here, they're really standing out light. So, and that's fine. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give them a little bit of shading. Okay. Now, how do you shade? Well, if the light is coming from kind of the center right here and, over here, the trees to the right side of the light will have kind of shade on the right side of their trunks, okay? Don't hit it with too heavy a hand. Okay, so see that right there is just kind of putting a little bit of tone on the right side, and on this side, the light is coming from in there. We'll go on the left side. You're just kind of reiterating your lighting direction. I turn my card in the direction that it's just easier to access a certain area or object in the scene. You don't always have to do everything upright or right side up. Okay, see our trees like that? See, I have a little bit more shading on the left side over here. See that? Doesn't it look like the lighting is kind of influencing our objects now? Now, we have a canopy of leaves up here, right? Foliage. So, I mean, just a little kind of details that you can put, your trees, up here, your trunks might be, the foliage is kind of casting its shadow, on these areas. So yeah, kind of everything's the light is kind of influencing, the tree trunks a little bit more like this now. Okay, so here's like this batch of foliage right here. Okay, so maybe I'll just put a little bit of shade here. I mean, there's no saying where the light is kind of coming through in here, but just kind of making some areas a little bit darker like this. Doesn't that look more natural than just having them solid, columns of, white like that? It just makes them a little bit more kind of integrated into the scene as far as lighting goes. And there's no set formula either for it. You just kind of darken up some of them and have areas of them a little bit lighter and whatnot. Okay, now one of the things that I like to do too is after I do that, I kind of add some shade. Then I like to go back and add a little bit of light into it too. Let's go with, I don't have my white Emoki 3mm. Let's go with the 3mm and 0.7 here. I just want something to match with the white of the trunks, okay? They're very stark right now. So we have all this texture going on with our foliage. Look at that foliage, how dimensional. Doesn't it look like it's in front of some trees and behind other parts? Like that. But let's do this. I'm looking at this right here. I want to break up these trunks a little bit more. Meaning, I just want to have some of this green foliage in front of these trees. Let's say there's some foliage growing down here. Okay. Okay, there we go. It just kind of breaks up. There's such strong verticals in here. It's good to kind of break them up a little bit, just so it's not so continuous. And I'll put some of this foliage right here going in front of this tree. So this trunk right here we're saying is closer to us. I'm getting a little bit looser, using these pens. I don't know. I'm not that everything was so precise, the first couple times I've used it, in past scenes. But the more I do it, it just, sometimes I'm going like this too. Like it's kind of creating like an oval, and I think that looks pretty decent. Okay. Okay, so let's do some of that white, okay? Let's do it bold. Let's do it with the 3mm. Yeah, 3mm seems to work just fine. Okay, I'll show you what that looks like. Now that might blend in. Sometimes it dries. Sometimes it dries and it doesn't look white at all. But I think the fact that I heat set a lot of it beforehand, I think it'll be fine. Okay, now this is where white will kind of integrate with the objects down here better too, but hopefully not. I don't want it so like obvious. Okay, I want things to blend in. So um, I'm going to take my fine line white pen. I'm not going to do this with a three big fat 3mm one. Okay. All right. So let me protect my hand from this right here. That might still be a little bit wet, but on this fence post, what I'll do is I'll just kind of add some highlights onto the fence. It kind of stands out because there's none on the road, and the road's kind of dark right now, but it will blend in once I start using some white pigment ink. Okay, so can you see that? You kind of break up your line. Don't just do a full line. Kind of line dot, kind of make it real scribbly, a little bit. But see that? Doesn't it make that fence kind of stand out stronger now? And it's just a few little dots on it, or lines, or dot line. It's like Morse code or something like that. Okay, let's do it on this one too. See these little dots on here? It's like we're trying to create relationships, okay? So when you do these little types of things like this, patterns, okay, or whatever, it could be color, pattern, value, anything. When you have little dots like that, and then there's dots up here, now these two objects, they're kind of speaking the same language, okay? You know what I mean? So it kind of unifies them through a common language. And like I said, it could be just a white, or it could be a white dot, and then it's a white dot up there, okay? Let's do some additional textures down here. We have a lot of rocks down here. We can do a little bit of shadows on them too, but what I like to do is on some of these rocks, maybe a little bit more highlighting the light areas like this, but see these little dots like this, these little highlights like that, can really be a nice textural and lighting form, but again, it's kind of what's happening in some other areas, so you're creating those kind of relationships through your piece right here. They're speaking the same language, in other words. Okay, now here's some fence posts too. Remember how we did it, the dark side on the right side of these trees out here? You can put a little bit of highlights on the left side of your fence posts, okay? So now those are kind of, capturing some of that light. If you don't like what you do, just take a little X-Acto blade or something and just scrape it right off. It'll come right off. Sometimes they put too many dots somewhere. Just kind of wipe them off or whatnot. Okay, so see these fences now? See how they're kind of capturing some of that light? Don't they look more kind of three-dimensional that way? See just that little amount on them like that. And, let's see. Here's another opportunity. This is what I was doing yesterday, too. Like on some of my birch trees, I put some, you can shade on one side of the birch bark, trunk, and you can highlight on the other side if you want to. And it would be on the opposite side, on the other side of the scene, okay? These ones are being left side illuminated, and the other ones are being right side illuminated. Okay. Kind of going on the contours of the bark too. And you can see it. I mean, I've drawn them right into the design itself. There's a lot of contouring lines and dot patterns in it. You can just kind of reiterate it a little bit with some additional white or whatever, you know. Could be a little dot or whatever. Could be a line, could be both. I'm just kind of scribbling around on here. All right, so that is that. Let's do some... Let me do my new cotton balls here. Okay, let's see how those work. I love that these cotton balls are... Packs have the Ziploc on it, too. Yeah, it seems like a superior cotton ball than what I've been using. Yeah, I can even feel it. There's more substance to it. Okay, so I really need to re-ink this. This is very dry, I'm sure. Okay, let's see how much is on there. Okay, I'm kind of making this fairly dense. I'm kind of pulling this like this, so I get a nice tight little area on here, okay? And then as I'm dabbing this into my pad. Now remember, my pad's very dry. Yours is going to probably be like super wet. Dab it off a little bit to squish that, you know, cotton down and to compress it a little bit. And then you start dabbing it into your scene. Okay, I'm going to re-ink this. This is like super dry. I've been kind of putting it off because I like this pad a little bit dry. That is way too dry, though. Okay, let's see. Where did my... I had this old card. Here we go. My annual National Park Pass. It's a great... Oh my gosh, look at all this cotton on here. See this cotton? Like that. Can you tell? See that, all that? Fuzz. That's why I bought a separate pad to make my impressions with. White impressions, because all this cotton gets built up on here. I do this technique on just about everything, so it is well worth it to get a second pad. You know, if you had a certain type of pad that you were going to use on just about every scene, you know, that would be worth it to get, right? So I stamp and I apply Brilliance White to a lot, okay, so it's kind of for different purposes, you know. Okay, so anyways, I'm going to add this mist coming down this road right here. Now see, it would have been a little bit better, like I said, to do that road first, but then you don't have to, you know, you can do it like I did, because I'm going to integrate this all now anyway with this white ink. The white pigment ink like this, it solves any type, I don't know about any type, most types of kind of design issues in terms of color, imagery. It does a lot of things. it enhances, it directs the viewer's eye, it kind of makes, you can make a lighter area. People tend to walk into the light. Now see this road right here? Like I said, if I knew I was going to stamp that red, I would have done this lighter, but see, I can just add some white ink to it and it becomes lighter. It kind of does it in the form of, it looks like it's like mist or fog or something like that, but, you can do it and it looks fine. All right, I'm putting some of this right over the top of some of these, this foliage up here. I like it at the base of some of my fences like that. Like that fence. Doesn't it look, that fence look really fantastic with that kind of base low-lying fog? So see, don't come up everywhere on it. Just kind of do it at the base like that. You know what I mean? And then when you do it like that, it becomes this low-lying fog. It's not just fog everywhere, okay? So what you kind of oscillate it. You put it over some of the image, but not over the other part. And it doesn't really matter what part you do. If I did it high, I don't know. I don't know if I would do it high for fog, but you certainly could. Like, I can bring some up here. This is generally the lighter area, so. See these background trees, they're a little, I mean, they're not really far in the distance, but, I can put a little bit of fog, pigment ink in there, and that becomes a little bit lighter. Let's see. How about over here? That might be kind of interesting. It's kind of, my fence is there, yeah, but, maybe I'll put it above the fence or something like that. See that little fog and kind of, it's kind of entering in that pix. I thought it was a little bit dark in here, so I'll add some of this in here. Yeah, see, it's lighter there. Problem solved. Not that it was a problem, but I don't know. Lighting distance issue solved, If it's too sharp, just kind of mute it a little bit. See, look at that. Look at that fence right there. Maybe I'll come across this way down here, I'm adding quite a bit of it here because, like I said, I want, there to be kind of a visual path down this road. And I just darkened in everything, but it just comes to show you that you can pretty much do whatever. And, if there's something else that you wish you could have done or something like that, or done differently, you can often remedy it with just, some end kind of finishing touches. All right, now this is going to get fairly dark when it dries, this pigment ink right here. So I'm going to make it quite a bit lighter than what I think is ideal, if it just remained as is, but pigment ink dries darker, okay? It dries more transparent so that other colors of ink will show through it, so I'm going a little bit more than what I think I'll need, or than what I think is ideal. Oh, one of the things I forgot to do on this is I wanted to bring some of these leaves, like they're falling down into the, on the surface of the road and whatnot. So let's bring some, maybe they wouldn't be, well, let's go with the bright green, yellow. Okay. That's almost too big. I have a smaller um, yellow like that. That'll be better, I think. Yeah, it's a little bit better. Okay, let's see. I'm drying it because I want to use more of my white pigment ink. And then I put it right over that. Some of that yellow is still wet, I know, but let's just do it. All right, I think that is about it. Let's take a look here. Kind of blending out a little bit. I'm pushing kind of a light area right there quite a bit, so I am putting quite a large application of this ink down there. All right, but I think that is about right. Now let's cut this out. Let's see what this final piece is going to look like. All right, so I'm going to cut it right on the vellum. I'll go on the inside a touch, okay, just so it'll be nice and crisp. Just using my X-Acto blade. Make several passes opposed to doing it just once. Much less chance of you getting cut. Much better chance of a nice precise trim as well, okay? And see, having this mounted on this cardstock, I don't know if you've worked with vellum before, but I mean, if you just want to have it loose, it's like you have to almost create a kind of a window mat. But oops, I said much better chance of getting a precise cut. And I didn't do it here. Let me come in here a little bit more. Okay, here we go. Okay, there we go. Finally. What was I saying? Oh yeah. It's just so much easier to mount this now. If you wanted to mount it on, some sort of background color, when you're formatting it into a card, if that's what you're going to do with it. Some people might cut it down, and I don't know, they might frame their pieces. I know some people that frame all their scenes, or have. Because landscape art, they put their own, they put their landscape art on display. Like, you're basically doing like landscape painting or something. And sometimes what they do is they enjoy it. And then what they do is, when they get tired of that one, they just pop it out of the frame. They just put on a new one. All right, so let's take a look at this here. All right. this will be, put into some other type of uh, matting or whatnot. On this one, I used some star dream on it. Okay, so when I did this one yesterday, I didn't have that graduated look in the background. Okay, like that. And I thought it needed some, color in the background like that. So just doing it on a piece of paper, I thought would be more dramatic. And I think it is. I think it would be even benefit from being even darker back there though, huh? I should have really went dark. I'll do that next time, but um I don't know, doing that background really made it a lot easier to kind of do a complete scene like that. And just so much faster. Okay, now this is like a double-sized piece of paper. Okay, 5 by 7 is pretty big. Um, but I really wanted to explore some things. Okay, so if I matted this on something, like something like the Star Dream would look cool. All right. So, anyways, I don't know, kind of a walk in the birch forest. And let's see something here. Okay, I just changed my exposure level like that a little bit. Let's take a look and see some of this. Okay, I'm getting more dimension the more I experiment with this. Okay, see that branch right there clearly looks like it's in front of this one. Okay, those leaves. And there's just no other. I mean, you can do that, um, but to get it like in between things, or the background trees back there, if it weren't on vellum, I would have to be really careful about not putting it in front of something like that. So, see this right here? It's in front of this one, and in front of this one right here. So that, remember, I just kind of did this one first, and then I put these branches in here, and then I stamped that one in the background. So it just really builds that layering right there. See, if this was going to be in the background, if we were just doing it on a piece of paper, I would have to stamp this out and mask that, right? Or something like that. I don't know. You would have to do some masking. Like this tree right here in the middle of these ones, okay? I would have had to mask that off and stamp that in there. So the vellum, I don't know, the vellum just makes it a lot easier to do certain things. It kind of makes you think three-dimensionally, though. It, in terms of what to do with your opaque media, such as the acrylic inks and the Dr. Martin's bleed proof white there and whatnot. But I don't know, it certainly made it easier. I didn't have to do a lot of coloring in the background like that because it was just on that one graduated, area. It was already kind of built in to that, so you can just kind of place that. So I'll look at, for some kind of existing papers and whatnot to do this type of thing on there, and then we'll just slap it right down, right over the top of a pre-existing, like a scrapbooking type of paper or something like that. There's probably some very inexpensive ones out there. I'll take a look around, and we can do these types of things on there, I think, really easy. Okay, so anyways, I hope you enjoyed this scene. I'm kind of figuring it out, this vellum and whatnot. Hopefully we can come up with some really great applications for, for some new designs or existing designs if you have them. This certainly has a new look for birch trees for me, and how to use them, because the whole thing about those birch trees, you want them nice and stark, nice and white against, some other type of background. And no, this is just one of those really easy ways to do it. I'd recommend some spray mount, if you're going to do that though, because I don't know how good this vellum would look if we put it down with, like a couple of photo squares or, those tape types of things that you lay down. The vellum would probably be rippled, so, one can of that spray mount will last you quite a few scenes, and it doesn't have to be just for vellum. You can use it on your other types of card making applications and whatnot. So, all right, thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments, please leave them down in the comment section. If you haven't subscribed, please think about doing so if you like this type of content. And we'll see you on the next scene.